Hello, today I'm going to be reviewing the Antec Draco 10, which is a micro-atx case with an absolutely gorgeous ARGB lighting bar on the front and a price point of less than £45. So is it any good? Let's check it out. The tempered glass side panel is removed by loosening the captive thumb screws at the back, pulling it backwards, tilting and then lifting away. The other side panel is again removed by loosening the captive thumb screws and pulling backwards. Taking a look at the front I/O, we've got two USB 3.0 Type A ports, a separate headphone and microphone jack, a power button and a button labelled LED, which is to control the lighting bar on the front of the case. Before we can remove the front panel, we're going to need to free up the two wires connected to it. One is connected up to the LED button at the top of the case, and that can simply be unclipped. And the other is a SATA power connector powering the LED lighting bar. With these cables freed up, the front panel can simply be pulled off at the front. Behind the front panel, we've got a full-length magnetic dust filter. There's no fans pre-installed at the front, but you can fit up to 3 120mm fans or 2 140mm fans. If you want to go with a radiator at the front, radiators up to 280mm are supported. At the top of the case you can fit two 120 or 2 140mm fans, and again up to a 280mm radiator is supported. At the rear of the case we've got our one and only included fan. This is a non-RGB fan with a 3-pin fan connector. If you prefer, you can fit a 120mm radiator at the rear. At the bottom of the case you're going to be able to fit two 120mm fans above the power supply. These are going to have to be screwed in from the top using long screws, although unfortunately these aren't included in the accessory box. Moving into the main body of the case, and the Draco 10 will accommodate both micro-atx and mini-atx motherboards. If you want to go with an air cooler, you'll be pleased to hear that large CPU coolers are supported up to a maximum height of 165mm. At the rear of the case we've got four horizontal PCIe slots. They are the breakaway type, but it's good to see that Antec included two replacement slot covers in the accessory box. You're also going to be able to fit very large graphics cards up to a maximum length of 360mm without any front fans. At the bottom of the case we've got another dust filter. This is simply a sheet of mesh held on with clips at the side over the power supply's intake. Moving into the rear compartment, it's good to see we've got plenty of cutouts in sensible places, although as you would expect in a case of this price point we don't have any rubber grommets. We've got plenty of cable tie down points, and cable routing space looks to be good at between 25 and 29.5mm. The case has three dedicated 2.5-inch drive mounting locations. There's two of them down at the bottom right hand side on removable brackets, and there's another one at the top left hand side of the case. At the bottom of the case we've got a hard drive cage which will accommodate either two 3.5-inch drives or two 2.5-inch drives. One in the drive tray itself and one on top of the hard drive cage. The position of the hard drive cage is adjustable and it can be moved further to the front, or alternatively it can be removed. The power supply is going to go down at the bottom right hand side, and with the hard drive cage installed you can fit full-sized ATX power supplies up to a maximum length of 194mm. What I want to do now is give you a look at the build I put together in the Draco 10. So you can probably tell from the build footage this was a budget orientated build, and in fact I put the whole build together for less than £800. So you want to check out that build guide, you'll find a link to it in the video. So in terms of temperatures, given the fact that I had used budget orientated components, it didn't really push the case to its limits. So as you can see the temperatures were very good, and if you haven't seen the build guide yet, in the system we had a 12100F and an RTX 3050. So this brings me on to my build experience in the Draco 10, and in general this was all really good. It's a really easy case to build in. I didn't really run into any problems at all. There's good cutouts, good access to the motherboard both at the top and at the bottom, and I had no trouble at all with cable management. If I was building again in the case, would I do anything different? One of the decisions I made was to go with an aftermarket cooler rather than the stock cooler. And I did cover the temperatures of this and noise levels of this in my original build guide, and I would definitely use the aftermarket Antec cooler if I was building again, and I wouldn't use the stock cooler. If you want to find out about the temperature and noise difference, which was fairly significant, you'll see that in the full step-by-step build guide. The only other thing that I would potentially change was the fan that I purchased for the build. When I looked at the Antec website, the fan that they had at the back of the case had RGB on it, and I assumed it was an RGB fan. So I picked up a non-RGB, very good Pure Wings 2 140mm fan for the front. And I was thinking this was going to give me the best balance, a lovely quiet fan at the front. We've already got ARGB effects on the front of the case, and we're going to get an ARGB fan at the back. It turns out the fan at the back doesn't have any ARGB on it. So if I was doing this again, what I would do is move the back fan to the front and pick up a fan that has ARGB on it for the back of the case. The only other thing I think you need to be careful with is this case has a cutout for your power supply. So be careful what side of your power supply is going to be shown and the text on it, because if this doesn't look good, whenever you look at your PC, you're going to be seeing it from the front of the build. So what I always encourage people to do, if you're going to get a case with a cutout and you don't have the power supply in hand, go onto the website, look at the images, work out the orientation your power supply is going to be going in, which is the fan facing down the way, and see what the text on that side of the power supply looks like. In some power supplies, actually the text is upside down and it's going to look absolutely horrible in this position. So can't stress this point enough, make sure you check it out. So moving on to the things I liked about the Draco 10, and the first thing I liked was the RGB lighting bar on the front panel. The effects on this can be changed using the LED button on the top of the case, and you do have a good range of effects, both dynamic and static colours. The only slight downside is there's no way to sync the RGB effects to your motherboard, but given that the fact that the RGB effects when the built-in controller are so good, I don't think this is a big issue. The other things I liked about the Draco 10 is it comes with good dust filtration. You have a full-length dust filter on the front, as well as the ones at the bottom and the top. It also comes with an included case fan, which isn't always something you get in a case at this price point. And actually, when we set the fan up in the motherboard BIOS, we were actually able to get it to run nice and quiet, which again isn't always something you'll get in a case in this price point. Another really important thing to mention is the build quality. And given the price point, the build quality you're getting is above what you would expect. From the moment you take off the tempered glass side panel, you can feel just how heavy and well built it is. And I had no trouble getting the panels off and on. And it's great to see captive thumb screws and panels that line up and slide on and off really easily. The build quality of the case was also fairly good. We had no marking at all on my table, which you quite often get in cheaper cases. We had no paint flaking off at all. And the fact that you're getting a case with such a nice lighting panel on the front is not something you would expect in this price point. I would put the build quality of this case somewhere in the range of a case costing £80 to £90. It's in that, definitely that mid-range, and it's not what you would expect in a case costing less than £45. So moving on to the things I didn't like about the Draco 10, and I think given this case's low price point, the majority of these are going to be forgivable. So the first thing I didn't like was the fact that in the accessory box we didn't have the standoff removal tool. So in general that wouldn't be a big issue, but the only slight problem with this case is that it doesn't come with all the standoffs you're going to need installed to use a micro-atx motherboard, which to be fair, the majority of people are going to use a micro-atx motherboard rather than a mini-atx motherboard in this case. So I think what Antec need to do is just secure those two additional standoffs in place if you don't want to include the standoff tool, so that a first-time builder is not going to struggle about how they're actually going to put these standoffs in. In the build guide, it was possible to put them in with a pair of pliers. I actually used a standoff removal tool from another case to secure the standoffs. The other accessory that isn't included is the screws that you're going to need to secure the fans at the bottom of the case. Again, I don't think this is a big issue given this case's budget price point, and I don't think many people are going to put fans at the bottom. Two reasons for this. One, it's a budget case, and if you're going to put extra fans in, chances are you're going to put them at the front or the top before you think of spending extra money on fans for the bottom. The other reason it's less of an issue is the fact the power supply is pretty close to the top here down at the bottom. So I don't think you're really going to get that much of a benefit by adding the fans down at the bottom. So I do think Antec were reasonable in leaving these screws out. Two other places the case shows its price point is the lack of rubber grommets over the two large cutouts to the right hand side of the motherboard. Although if you're very careful with your cable management at the back, you can keep all the cables away from the cutouts so they're not on display from the front. The other place is the type of PCIe slot covers and the fact that they're the breakaway type. These tend to be found in the more budget cases, although Antec have done a good job and include replacement slot covers should you need to put them back in again. The only other potential negative with this case is the fact that your intake at the front is limited to the bottom half of the front panel, with the top half being solid. So I think this is only going to be a problem if you put high-end components in the case, and given that this is a more budget oriented case, the chances are you're probably going to go with more budget oriented components like I have. And as my temperature testing has shown with the components I've gone with, we had absolutely no problems. And in fact, if you were to offer me a mesh panel for the front of this case, I wouldn't take it, because I think having the difference in the case, solid at the top, perfect at the bottom, with the ARGB lighting bar in the middle, is one of this case's main features, and I wouldn't change it. So putting all that together, I absolutely loved the Draco 10, and for me, this is by far the best budget case that I have built in. So if you are looking for a micro-ATX case for a budget-oriented build, I think definitely check out the Draco 10, because I can 100% recommend it. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please remember to give it a thumbs up, and if you're not currently subscribed to the channel, please hit the subscribe button as well. Thanks for watching.